At 6 a.m. every morning, I had to get on a city bus and ride for an hour, sometimes more, just to get to school. And I was willing to do that because I was willing to do whatever it took for me to go to college. I set my sights high. I decided I was going to Princeton, but I quickly realized that for me, a kid like me, getting into Princeton wasn't just going to happen on its own. See, I went to a great school, but at my school we had so many kids, so few guidance counselors. They were dealing with hundreds of students. So they didn't always have much time to help me personally get my applications together. Plus, I knew I couldn't afford to go on a bunch of college visits. I couldn't hire a personal tutor. I couldn't enroll in SAT prep classes. We didn't have the money. And then, get this. Some of my teachers straight up told me that I was setting my sights too high. They told me I was never going to get into a school like Princeton. And I still hear that doubt ringing in my head. So it was clear to me that nobody was going to take my hand and lead me to where I needed to go. Instead, it was going to be up to me to reach my goal. I would have to chart my own course. There are those of us that are born with this sort of thing in us. I write about it in my book because I had to reflect on sort of how did I get here? What were the things in my life that made the difference? And some of it was that I was temperamentally always that kid, always that I'll show you. You give me a challenge, I'll prove you wrong. So people are born with a temperament and that's that internal hunger that I'm talking about, and that imagine having a girl like that somewhere in the world who doesn't get to exercise that, where that feeling, that temperament isn't nurtured. For me, it was nurtured, and it started simply with parents who believed in my voice. And I share that with people because my parents weren't wealthy. They were not well connected. They didn't go to college themselves. We were a poor family. But what they gave me was a sense of belief that my voice, the words that came out of my mouth were clever and interesting, and they were interested in it. So when you start with a foundation where you're telling a kid very early on that they are valuable, that those words in and of themselves can make a difference. It isn't magic, it isn't money, it isn't resources. And that's what some families miss. There are families who believe that if I can't give my kids stuff, then I should just be quiet and let them be. Well, no, the truth is that teaching an individual early on how to use their voice and that their voice matters allows them to then be advocates for themselves as they go along.
Are you going to throw up your hands and say that progress will never come? Are you going to get angry and lash out? Are you going to turn inward and just give in to despair and frustration? Or are you going to take a deep breath, straighten your shoulders, lift up your head, and do what Barack Obama has always done? As he says, when they go low, I go high. That's the choice Barack and I have made. That's what has kept us sane over the years. We simply do not allow space in our hearts, minds, or souls for darkness. Instead, we choose faith. Faith in ourselves, in the power of hard work. Faith in our God, whose overwhelming love sustains us every single day. That's what we choose. We choose love. Our love for our children. Our commitment to leaving them a better world. Our love for our country, which has given us so many blessings and advantages. Our love for our fellow citizens. Parents working hard to support their kids. Men and women in uniform who risk everything to keep us safe. Young people from the toughest backgrounds who never stop believing in their dreams. Young people like so many of you. That's what we choose. And we choose excellence. We choose to tune out all the noise and strive for excellence in everything we do. No cutting corners, no taking shortcuts, no whining.
A kid will believe, a day like we had in Vietnam, you can wake up either feeling changed or you can feel like, did that happen? And then if nothing good ever comes after that, it reinforces the disappointment that they feel on an ongoing basis. It's like, yeah, they came, they saw, the cameras were here, the lights were on, but weeks went by and, I never heard from them again. And that we try to avoid when we work with kids. So when I was First Lady, whenever we had a powerful interaction with a group of kids, whether it was Islington, whether it was in Vietnam, whether it was in Cambodia, it couldn't just be that moment. We made sure that we followed up at least 2 or 3 or 4. There's only so much I can do with this big platform. But you guys as leaders, that consistent return to them will be the thing that they remember. It's not the first visit, it's the second and the third and the 5th visit. So, because that's the kind of repetition that you need with children, with your own children. As you're teaching them anything, they take it in the more you repeat it. Parenting is about repetition. Nope, can't do it. Still can't. Nope, the answer's still no. And probably around the 10th, maybe the 100th time, they'll be like, I guess it's no.
It works.
But the same thing is true with the positive reinforcement that you have in the life of a child. And quite frankly, that's true for any issue that you're taking on. It's that once you take it on, then do it. Show up for the communities that you're serving. Because so many of the communities that we all work in have been disappointed. And they're used to that letdown. They're used to that sort of one hit and then we're on. Think about one of my heroines, Marion Wright Edelman, class of 1960, working as a young civil rights lawyer down in Mississippi. Attorneys in judges' chambers refused to shake her hand. The sheriff locked the doors against her when she came to visit her clients in jail. She was always careful to leave the door open when she started her car in the morning. That way, if somebody had planted a car bomb, she'd had a chance of being injured rather than killed. But through it all, she continued to represent her clients. She continued to resist unjust laws with every fiber of her being. And then there's Janet Bragg, class of 1925, who was determined to be a pilot. When she was barred from flying out of segregated airports, she worked with her flying school classmates and instructors to build their own airfield. When she was rejected from the Women Air Force Service pilots because of her race, she enrolled in a civilian training program instead. And when she completed her training, but an instructor unfairly prevented her from receiving her license, she picked up and moved to Chicago, passed the exam, and became the first African-American woman to earn a commercial pilot's license. Of her experiences, she said, there were so many things they said women couldn't do and blacks couldn't do. Every defeat to me was a challenge. For 6 generations, that is what Spelman women have done. They have seen every defeat as a challenge. Now, did they have moments of doubt, anxiety, and fear? Did they have moments of despair when they thought about giving up or giving in? Well, of course they did. We all do. And I am no exception. When I got to college, that happened to me during my very first semester. I took a class on Greek mythology. Yes, Greek mythology. That was way over my head. I found myself sitting in a lecture hall full of juniors and seniors. How did I get there? Struggling just to keep up. And by the time I took the midterm exam, all I could muster was a C. And it was the very first C I'd ever gotten, and I was devastated. But instead of wilting, I found a way to fight through it. I poured my heart and soul into a paper. I spent a lot of time talking to the professors before and after class. And in the end, I ended up getting a good grade in that class. But what I learned was far more important than that letter grade from that experience. What I learned was that when something doesn't go your way, you just got to adjust. You've got to dig deep and work like crazy. And that's when you'll find out what you're really made of during those hard times. But you can only do that if you're willing to put yourself in a position where you might fail. And that's why so often failure is the key to success for so many great people. Take Steve Jobs, who was fired from Apple early in his career. And now his iPods and iPads and iPhones have revolutionized the entire world. Oprah was demoted from her first job as a news anchor. Now she doesn't even need a last name. And then there's this guy, Barack Obama, who lost I could take up a whole afternoon talking about his failures, but he lost his first race for Congress, and now he gets to call himself my husband.
When we drop our guards and we let ourselves become vulnerable, and that vulnerability allows us to share our true stories with each other. Not the stuff on the surface, but the things that really connect us, like how we were raised, the values that we learned around the dinner table, the people who impacted us in our lives, the things that made us scared, the things that gave us courage. That when we share that truth, we can see ourselves in each other a little bit better.
No matter
what,
who
right?
You are.
Your dad is someone that you take the politics out of it. Mm-hmm. And I had an opportunity to sit by your father at funerals, the highs and the lows, and we shared stories about our kids and about our parents. Our values are the same. Mm-hmm. We disagree on policy, but we don't disagree on humanity. We don't disagree about love and compassion. I think that's true for all of us. It's just that we get lost in our fear of what's different. So yeah, we've gotta work on that. But I think that this generation coming up, I think they know more than we did. Each generation knows a little bit more. While one can argue that social media is problematic, it's also opening young people up to new ideas, to each other, to other parts of the world. My hope is that they will be more open-minded and more secure in who they are so that they can welcome other people's stories into the mix. But it has to begin with us being willing to be vulnerable and share who we really are with our neighbors so that we're not strangers to each other. And that way we can't let somebody else from the outside tear us apart because we know each other, right? I know you, I've seen you, we broke bread together, I may not agree with you, but I like you, you are my neighbor. That takes work and commitment.
Other people told me that I might not be able to do well in school for whatever reason. I was always a good student, I worked hard, but I thought there was some magic that happened that made you really, I didn't know that it was just plain old hard work. So there were periods of doubt for sure. I think I have doubts today. Doubts don't go away. You just learn how to deal with them. You start knowing yourself and you become more confident. The more successes you have, the more chances you take. You don't let the failures or the stumbles define you. Everybody falls every now and then. Some people fall a lot. And what I realize is that we have long lives if we're healthy and we do what we're supposed to do. I'm 47 years old. So think about it. Whatever mistake I made when I was 13, who cares? So think about life as a long trajectory. But at the same time, you don't want to make huge mistakes, because when you're young, making big mistakes can last forever, right? So you want to choose wisely. But the stumbles, the lessons learned, that's part of life that makes you grow. But I came to know that. I didn't know that when I was your age. I thought every mistake was the end of the world. I'll never get into school. I'll never be, of course, we all feel that way. But just continue to work, put the effort in. And I think that has been some of what's helped me being First Lady. First of all, is knowing who you are and being confident in yourself, because there'll be, Clarissa, what did you say, pushing beyond other people's labels of you, all right? That's a big part. That's what we do to each other all the time. We don't even know each other, and we already determined from one glance, meeting, one line, one word, one phrase, this is who you are. So you have to know who you are before that. And you live that reality, and you keep living it out no matter what. And if you're have good character and good intentions, that ultimately shines through. But in the end, it's hard work, and I like to work hard, and I like to do good things, and you practice that now. And believe it or not, I didn't know it. It prepared me to be the First Lady of the United States. I didn't know. I guess I'm doing okay. But you know what? Every day we just get up and keep doing what we think is the right thing. I didn't find my passion until long after college. Heck, until after law school. I mean, the truth is I still spent way too much of my time at Princeton continuing to chase grades and check boxes and climb higher and higher. I went on to law school, I did the same thing. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I had everything I was told I should want. Fancy job at a prestigious law firm, a big office, a nice paycheck. But on the inside, something was missing. And so, after a few knocks, I finally asked myself some big questions, simple questions. What did I want out of my life? What makes me happy? What do I care about? Yeah, simple questions that I had never bothered to ask, too busy checking boxes. And soon I realized that what I really wanted was pretty simple. I wanted to give back to the people around me, to the world around me. I wanted to live my life by the principle that to whom much is given, much is expected. So, for me, that led me to quit that fancy job. And since then, I've dedicated my life to giving back. I've worked to train young people for careers in public service. I've started community outreach programs at a college and a hospital. And today, as First Lady, I'm working to honor our nation's military families and help our children grow up healthy. But as I look back, I wish I'd asked myself what I really wanted when I was sitting right where you are. So graduates, my message to all of you today is this: do not waste a minute living someone else's dream. Each of us has unique gifts. But it takes a lot of work, a lot of real work to discover what brings you joy. It just doesn't happen. It requires you spending some time, and you won't find what you love simply by checking boxes or padding your GPA. You won't figure it out only by listening to your guidance counselor, your friends, or even your parents. You can only find your passion by looking inside yourself.
What's the best advice do you think you've given your daughters?
Oh, gosh, I give them so much advice. They're so sick of me. Now that they're in college, I have these texting. Did I tell you to remember little things like, you are eating some green things, aren't you?
But what is the thing that over the years was a running theme in your house that you said over and over?
What I tell them is what I continue to tell themselves, is that they have to walk their own walk. You know, they cannot define themselves by looking at each other or looking at me or their dad. They have to take the time to get to know themselves, give themselves a moment to figure out who they want to be in the world, not who they think I want them to be, not what the rest of the world says about them, but to really think about how they want to shape their lives and how they want to move in this world. So I don't want them measuring themselves by external influences. And for young girls, that is hard to do.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
that is a very hard thing to do. And everybody should understand that as a responsibility. It's Instagram culture. It drives me crazy.
It was hard with just cable TV when you're watching all the images and music videos. It's, I don't know, exponentially difficult with social media when you're comparing yourself to everybody on social media.
Yeah. So I constantly have to remind them that they have to live in their own skin. And that takes time too. And I try to make sure they understand that unfolding of understanding who you are, it is a journey of becoming. You don't know it all in your 20s.
If you want another awesome video in our Black Excellence series, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.